Hello, hello, Hidden Hermit here. Taking a little bit of a breather because we're going to be discussing the Five of Swords from the Waite Tarot. Now, it's an interesting image. It's a very interesting image. There's a lot of potential things going on here. It's very different to the Hermetic decks. I mean, with the exception of perhaps the Sol Busca Tarot from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the Waite is known for depicting people in the pip cards. And there is definitely something at play here. There's definitely something going on. And there's lots of things to consider when the Five of Swords comes up. And when you think about the Five of Swords, you think about, well, as with all the fives, some sort of change, some sort of adjustment. But the Five of Swords can also mean destruction or sadness. Indecision is also another one. There's a lot of indecision and deciding going on in the Suit of Swords, but indecision comes out here. Now, when the Five of Swords comes up for me, the question I ask myself is, who is the seeker? Who's asking the questions in this spread? Because you've got three characters in this. And it's important to note that out of the five swords, you've got two on the ground here. This dude is carrying two swords like this, and he's holding a third here. So why I asked that question, you know, what does this card mean for the querent or the seeker? Who is the querent or the seeker in this card? Is it this person who let's face it, has got a rather, is smirking? That's not a particularly pleasant facial expression that this fella is sporting here. And the other two characters are kind of, well, they don't seem particularly happy. And in fact, this one has kind of got his head in his hands. So yeah, who's being represented by the Five of Swords? And that's the question you really need to ask. In the Hermetic tradition, the Five of Swords means defeat. Now, clearly, these people have been defeated by this person, or perhaps this person's rocked up and is just taking their swords. It poses a lot of questions. It's a tricky card, is the Five of Swords. You know, as opposed to, say, the Five of Wands. Well, actually, the Five of Wands is kind of tricky as well, isn't it? All the fives are kind of tricky, to be perfectly honest. I think the Five of Swords is the trickiest, because you have that question of, you know, who's who? Who's who in this card? For me, when the Five of Swords comes up reversed, it kind of means the same thing, to be perfectly honest. I still ask the same question, but perhaps that sense of remorse, that sense of sadness is a little more defined, you know. The idea of defeat, that there has been a conflict and a battle, and this is the direct aftermath. When it comes up reversed, maybe you've been dwelling on that defeat for far too long. You haven't given yourself permission to let go of whatever the situation was, and you're dwelling on it. It is, after all, the Suit of Swords. Other things that I find quite interesting is the placement of the swords. So you have two swords that are almost horizontal, and three swords that are either two pointing up and one pointing down. So lots of numbers to think about at that point. If you've got your fortune teller head on, the Five of Swords for me kind of symbolises the last throes of winter, if you like. So you're thinking about a late January? Yeah, late January for me, when you put your fortune teller's cap on. Astrologically, it is Venus in Aquarius, which is a fascinating mix. It really is. Like, Venus isn't particularly unhappy in Aquarius, but that Aquarian energy of thinking about the big picture, I don't think it chimes well with that idea of sort of personal beauty and love. There is conflict there from an astrological perspective. But that, again, is just my viewpoint, if you like. A lot going on with the Five of Swords, a lot to think about, a lot of questions that are being asked. In fact, I've got the urge to pull out a clarifier now. Why are you here? I know why he's here, because I'm doing a video on the Five of Swords. But that's all I'm going to say about it at this point. A lot of remorse, a lot of worry and regret going on with the Five of Swords. But again, who is it? Are you the person that's taken advantage of this defeat, or one of you is the querent one of the characters here that's wallowing in that sorrow and defeat? Anyway, on a more chipper note, The Six of Swords is next, so hurrah! That's the Five of Swords from the Waite Smith Tarot. Thank you very much.